For human health, we now know that the protein quality and the protein type is very important. But it's not only for human health. Animal protein versus, let's say, plant-based protein comes from different sources, obviously, and they have different impact, let's say, globally on greenhouse gas emissions, but also, let's say, the nitrogen disposition, also the quality of the biodiversity. When they looked further, it became much more clear that, let's say, the detrimental effect of, for example, the saturated fat, which is high in animal foods, was really important to reduce. While on the other hand, whole grain foods, nuts and seeds, very plant-based foods with not only protein but also other beneficial nutrients was really low and should be increased to be able to prevent chronic diseases further.
Our diet is changing and we're using different foods in our diet now, including more plant foods or alternative protein sources. But not all these different new foods are equal, so we need to carefully evaluate them and compare them to see how they fit and all contribute to our overall nutritional requirements.
So it's very difficult to say animal-based proteins or plant-based proteins are better for health, because it really depends on the situation. For instance, an animal-based protein, the quality is higher, so it's better digestible. But the compounds in animal-based foods are sometimes also linked to health risks, where in plant-based protein you maybe have a bit lower protein quality, but you have a lot of fiber and a lot of phytochemicals and vitamins that are very beneficial to our health. So when you want to evaluate dietary sources or a whole diet of the day, you really have to look at the total picture to make a good assessment of the health effects.
The first challenge is to analyze the proteins themselves. So are the plants we're going to use as new crops or new varieties, are they giving us the right quality of protein? So you need to do a deep analysis of those proteins. But next to that, you have to consider that the consumer has to eat the products that you're trying to develop. So they have to be palatable, they have to be attractive, they have to look nice, taste nice, smell nice. So there are other components as well which are very important. So we need to look at those as well.
Regarding the composition of foods and the composition of our diets, there are various things which I'm surprised about. For example, we say there's a man on the moon in 1969, but we don't even know what is in our food. And I think it's important to know that, because we can discover or analyze, let's say, the protein quality to a much better context-based, and we can investigate also the other nutrients and even the bioactives. Now, to find them, we need Foodomics.
I think the key thing of Foodomics, we're not just talking about one technology, but a set of technologies. They have the ability to give us a deeper knowledge of the products that we're using and that we're eating, and to compare those with the more traditional products. And new products can more quickly be developed to be better able to match, for example, the meat component in our diet, so that we are more effectively able to get to a position where we can really facilitate the protein transition.
Biomarkers can help us here to pick the best foods that would fit in our diet and contribute to our nutritional requirements. And this will ultimately lead to new dietary recommendations that will also include new foods and will ultimately increase our nutritional diversity. A biomarker is typically a nutrient or a metabolite of the nutrient that we can measure inside the human body. With more recent technological advances in this field, we're able to determine the concentrations of hundreds or thousands of molecules from a single sample. And this allows us to make a molecular fingerprint of what's going on in the human body. And we want to employ these new technologies in nutrition to help us to identify the molecular fingerprint of different diets.
What is in the dark matter of our food? What is exactly what we're eating? We can investigate how this translates, what happens in the human body, and we can investigate what happens in the soil, what happens in the environment.
And that information can also be used to develop new nutrition recommendation guidelines that respect the fact that not all proteins have the same quality.